Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Bima Hafiz. Today, I would like to present my paper entitled Diplomatic Immunity versus Human Rights, Khashoggi Murder Case. Overview of the chapter, Introduction, Literature Review, Research Method, Finding and Analysis, and last but not least, Conclusion and Recommendation. Quick review. Introduction. The murder of Jamal Khashoggi shocked the world. It is not only because of the grisly of his death, but also where it took place, inside a consulate which enjoys special protections under international law. Based on Article 55 of the Vienna Conventions on Diplomatic Relations 1963 stated that shall not to be used in any manner incompatible with the exercises of the consular functions. It means outside the functions of the consular, it's prohibited. In this case, murder happened inside of the consulate. And problem of formulations, how international law works for the Khashoggi murder case. And research objective of research to know how international law can be implemented in Khashoggi murder case. And benefit of research. For theoretical aspect, this research gives benefits to understand deeply about how diplomatic community and how international law works for the Khashoggi murder case. And for the practical aspect, this research provides a better understanding how international law works for the Khashoggi case and justice for the settlement. Such a better understanding is useful for governments, lecturers, students, and parties who concerned to this issue. Literature review. What is diplomatic immunity? Actually, diplomatic immunity is a privilege given to diplomat and consular representatives in international law. They include protections against criminal prosecutions and being exempt from paying taxes in host nations. This immunity regulates in two treaties. First is Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations 1961 and the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations 1963. Sovereignty of states. Sovereignty is derived from the Arabic word daulah, which means power. These terms mean the sovereignty is an expression of the total powers of government in terms of legislative, judicial, and executive. The sovereignty of a state is a state with full sovereignty of all its affairs, territory, and the existence. Non-intervention principle. The principle of non-intervention is principle of international law that limits every foreign country to interfere with the internal affairs of other nations. The principle is the territorial sovereignty rights held by the other countries. Finding and analysis. Jamal Khashoggi and why was he become a target? The murder of Jamal Khashoggi was one of the most shocking cases in the journalistic world. He was worked at Washington Post as a journalist and he always criticized the Saudi government. The Turkish authorities suspected that the murder of Khashoggi was the Saudi government. Saudi Arabia is alleged involved in this case because of Jamal Khashoggi always criticized many of Saudi Arabia's policies in his article, which makes everyone suspicious about what is the reason behind this matter. To complement the image of Saudi Arabia as a country that does not fully supported the freedom of the press. Laws and regulations related in Khashoggi assassination case. A recent report by the United Nations Agency for Education, Science and Culture, UNESCO, said that a journalist was killed every 4 days worldwide. UNESCO Director General's report since a decade ago, about 827 journalists were killed while on duty. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, based on Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, stated everyone has the right to freedom of opinion expression. Article 19 further states that the right to freedom of opinion expression includes the freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of foreign threat. ICCPR, or International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, based on Article 19, Paragraph 1 of the ICCPR stated, shall have the right to hold opinions without interference. And paragraph 2 stated, everyone shall have the right to freedom of expression. This right shall include freedom to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds, regardless of frontiers, either orally or writing or print. The Convention Against Torture. The prohibition against torture and other forms of ill treatment is well established as one of the few absolute human rights which must be respected without any restriction. Under international law, we know as use Cogent's norm. This applies even in times of war, internal political instability, or public emergency, and there are no exceptional circumstances whatever under which torture can be justified, including any threat of terrorist act or violent crime or religious or traditional justification. The prohibition against torture and other forms of ill treatment is embodied in several international human rights treaties and declarations, including First, International Declaration of Human Rights, Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. ICCPR, Article 7. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. The Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment, Punishment, hereafter we know in 1987. Okay, when we're talking about the murder of Khashoggi, the issue is about diplomatic immunity versus human rights, which one can revoke. Okay, human rights versus diplomatic immunity. On Article 55 of the Vienna Convention 1963 stated, shall not to be used in any manner incompatible with the exercise of the consular functions. In this case, murder happened inside the consulate. Article 31, Vienna Convention 1963, the immunity of a diplomatic agent from the jurisdiction of the receiving state does not exempt him from the jurisdiction of the sending state. It means that if the Saudi Arabia want to justify this case, it means that the diplomatic immunity can revoke. And in Article 32, the immunity from jurisdiction of diplomatic agents and of the person enjoying this immunity may be waived by the sending state. It means that uh, human rights cannot be revoked, but in other hand, based on the Article 32 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, the immunity of the diplomatic immunity can revoke by the sending state. Okay, conclusion. Since the human rights prevails the diplomatic immunity in the context of protection of human dignity. In the case of Khashoggi, Turkish authority has a right to interfere and doing investigations in the location of the massacres, the consulate of Saudi Arabia in Istanbul. And in the Khashoggi assassination murder, human rights must be firm in force, unlike human rights that cannot be annulled by everyone. Diplomatic immunity has different nature since it can be revoked based on article in Vienna Convention 1963. Turkish authority has a right to interfere and doing the investigation in the location of the massacres, the consulate of Saudi Arabia in Istanbul. And for the recommendation, even though international law does not seem to provide a firm statement as to the questions of priority between human rights and the diplomatic immunity, however, because the human rights are naturally non-derogable and used Cogens, the Convention of Diplomatic Relations 1961 that provide the immunity for every single diplomatic mission should be reviewed when it vis-a-vis with a case of human rights. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.